Trying to think of how to start this one. It's tough. It's really tough. I think human beings, this is just an insinuation, but I think human beings crave structure. No matter how free we like to live our lives, if you don't have structure, a type of structure or purpose, everything becomes a little more difficult. Now, I haven't served in the military myself, but I have to believe that they're given nothing but structure and purpose. The choice that they made to serve in the military gives them purpose. The military gives them purpose. And they're broken down and given structure every day. It's important. And when you serve, once you're done serving and you leave and that structure is taken away, it can feel like you're lost. Like you don't have any more purpose. Like you can't figure out what you should be doing. Recently I was, and that can be challenging. The veteran suicide rate, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's about double the civilian suicide rate per 100,000 people. Lack of structure, mental health, addiction problems can plague veterans at a much higher rate than civilians. And these are people that, having the bravery to do what they do and to make the choices that they do, can make it even more, make the problem even more treacherous, because asking for help can be difficult. You tend to isolate even more than the regular addict or alcoholic would. Recently, I was fortunate enough to interview Spartan native Savor, who told me about his time in the military, his choice to serve, and ultimately coming back home and facing those feelings of powerlessness, maybe uselessness, kind of didn't feel, battled with addiction for years and tried to do it on his own, ultimately leading to a suicide attempt. And if it wasn't for his service dog, Phoenix, he wouldn't have been here today or that day to talk to me about his life. Since then, he went on to help various veterans groups and to start tactical recovery that operates out of the Cooley Recovery Center here in La Crosse on Ferry Street. And the point of the group is using the SMART recovery system for addiction and alcoholism, provide a source of structure and comfort for veterans. Beyond that, beyond just being a recovery group, provides camaraderie. It provides activities and things for a common space for veterans to be together, and a place where you can relate to common experiences. Now, his service dog Phoenix, if it wasn't for Phoenix, JT wouldn't be here. But ultimately, after losing a battle to cancer, Phoenix ultimately lost a battle to cancer, and through Phoenix's passing, JT, with another group, started Brodys Phoenix Fund, which raises money for veteran service dogs who are battling cancer. Raises money to help with vet costs, medical costs. So not only was he at a point where he was done trying and was going to give up and just end it, he chose not to. He chose to stay, and he chose to use his life and his purpose from here on out to serve others, to reach out for others with stories like his, and to help others with stories like his. So it was a big honor. I really appreciated it, and this is a very long-winded introduction. I'm going to have to cut out some of this, but we're going to play a quick promo spot for the Tactical Recovery Center, and then we'll get to my interview with JT Savor at the Cooley Recovery Center. Thank you very much. This is Yelling at Birds. I'm Matt. Enjoy the interview.
Substance use disorders and mental health issues can impact anyone. It's especially true for men and women who've served in the military. Talking about it can be hard. Seeking help can be even harder. The Tactical Recovery Group is your resource. The La Crosse Area Veterans Mentor Program and Cooley Recovery Center have come together to create an environment where your military experience and struggles can be understood and addressed. The Tactical Recovery Group is free and confidential. Contact the Tactical Recovery Group at the Cooley Recovery Center or go to facebook.com/Tactical Recovery Group.
Well, JT, thank you very much for having me in here today. Welcome me into the Cooley Council for Addictions, or Cooley Recovery Center.
Cooley Recovery Center now. Yep. We're just in the process of reflagging everything, but yeah, technically Cooley Recovery Center.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to know a little bit about your story, the story of tactical recovery, and a few other things that we've mentioned. So I guess starting out, would you let me know a little bit about who you are and what brought you here?
Sure. So I was in the military for just about 10 years. In the ending phase of my transition out, I had gotten injured in combat and had a series of just unfortunate events that occurred where surgeries were required and different reasons that there was a legitimate need for opiate pain medications. Sure. And that just kind of spiraled into a very dark place where quickly I found myself completely addicted to opiate painkillers. Got out of the military, was still carrying around that baggage of everything that I had been through while still in the military, and learned that, here's this pill that I can take to really mask all of that pain and stuff that I was internally holding on to, and just drove that addiction even deeper inside of me. Didn't think that I had PTSD, didn't really know anything about it at the time. So I didn't seek out any assistance for anything like that. And I just self-medicated for a couple of years until, life just got to really dark places and had some events that kind of awakened my eyes to where I was. Some fortunate things that took place and allowed me to kind of realize that I did need some help, and that there was some things that were contributing to my need for these opiate medications, that it wasn't just all chemical addiction related.
Sure.
So at that point in time, I actually had a social worker that came right out finally at one point. So let me back up a little bit. July 2013, I had a suicide attempt.
Okay.
And that was kind of the end thing that kind of made me realize, something, I gotta do something different here. Luckily, for me, I was fortunate enough at this time to have a service dog in my life. His name was Phoenix, and he was kind of like my little guardian angel. And when I had my suicide attempt, his training kicked in and he intervened, and ultimately he ended up saving my life, because he just came up to me as I was bleeding out, and he just intervened, and he actually, it gives me chills to think about, but he came up to me and he just put his head in my lap and he just looked at me, and it just in that moment it pulled me out of the dark hole that I was in, and it made me realize that there is still people and things in this world that love me, that want me here, and I can't do this. What am I doing? And I was able to kind of quickly repair some of the damage I had done. I actually fashioned a tourniquet using a dog leash and a giant metal spoon, and then I passed out. Next time I woke up, I was actually in the hospital and getting all stitched up and stuff like that. That then led to me, obviously, with that type of suicide attempt, I was required to go and see a psychologist before being able to be released and stuff. And finally, at that point in time, this psychologist just straight up asked me, do I have a substance use problem? And that was the first time anybody had ever asked me.
Okay.
And I just, I couldn't lie. I couldn't, I had to say yes. I don't know why I said yes. I'd lied many, many times before to other people, but I'd never really been straight up asked either,
Right.
So when she just straight up asked me, I finally admitted to it. And then that got things kind of moving for me. I was able to get into the Toma VAMC's substance abuse program. After getting some sobriety under my belt, kind of getting my head kind of cleaned up a little bit, I was able to then transition into their PTSD program. I went through that twice. And then after that, I was in their year-long transitional residency program. So all in all, I had a little bit over 18 months of almost consistent treatment. And it was that long treatment that really helped, make this thing stick for me. So I was very fortunate to be able to have everything that I had, to have that, long continued amount of care and stuff like that. And that was seven years ago almost.
Okay.
And then I just kind of came here. I ended up coming to Cooley because I heard a radio ad where they were looking for people who had been through the process of getting into recovery, substance abuse, and everything. They were starting up a new program that was going to be funded through this federal grant that they had received, where it's called the ED2 Recovery Program. ED2 just stands for Emergency Departments. So the gist of it is, whenever someone comes into the emergency room and they have an overdose on opiates, that emergency room would reach out to us and ask us if we would be willing to come down there, bring one of our trained recovery coaches down to try to talk to this person, to kind of help them to see if we can't get them into recovery.
Okay.
Get them in, let them know what they have available to them, just kind of help guide them. And from that, that's where I got hired on for that, and that kind of transitioned into a staff position with Cooley Recovery. And then from there, La Crosse Area Veterans Mentorship Program actually had reached out to me, and they had told me about how they had tried to create a program for veterans in recovery from both substance abuse and mental health, but they just didn't have much success at it. I think the reason that they didn't have much success is because it was kind of out of the field of expertise that they're accustomed to. You had a lot of really intelligent, awesome people doing amazing things, but they weren't real engraved in recovery community and all that stuff. And I had met the executive director, Dustin Schultz, before, and he must have just remembered my name and my story and everything like that. And he came down and talked to me about if I would be willing to create a program specifically for veterans, and they would fund it. So that kind of got the ball rolling, and here we are with the Tactical Recovery Program now.
Wow. That's a journey.
Yeah, it's quite a lot
Yeah.
all tossed into a little story there, but yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, the story is important.
Yeah.
Because I know, a lot of people would identify with a lot of the things that you've gone through. Now you mentioned kind of, you didn't really realize, obviously opiates were prescribed, necessary, you're having surgeries,
Right.
But you didn't really think of the PTSD portion of it.
I'm sorry, go
Was
ahead.
was there really much awareness or focus on that as you were serving, as you were getting ready to leave the service?
So there was some awareness brought on about the capacity for abuse of opiates, but not so much the addiction part of it.
Sure.
I will say that at that time, this is like 2006, 2007, 2008 timeframe, when it was really kind of the height of the abusive prescribing of Oxycontin and oxycodone and all that stuff. So I will say it was, it was kind of the Wild West for getting pills. We would come back from deployment, and it seemed like everybody was getting a prescription for painkillers and, barbiturates and benzos and just everything. So very loosely prescribed with minimal actual requirement for these drugs. And then very little was actually said about the serious nature of these chemicals that you're putting in your body and what they potentially can do.
Sure. Have you seen that change? Have you seen more awareness in that regard since then?
A little bit. I think I haven't been in the military ranks to actually see if it's coming from them individually, but just because there's so much more awareness in the public society in general. There's a lot more understanding, and that unfortunately came at the cost of a lot of people losing their lives or losing everything that they have. So it's very unfortunate, but hopefully we can take that tragedy and help turn it into something positive and save somebody else so that they don't have to go through that same experience.
Right. So what was what led to this decision to serve initially?
In the military?
Yeah.
It was something I always kind of thought about doing. I grew up in a family that had a lot of military personnel. My grandfather was a World War II vet. My dad was in the Air Force, kind of at the tail end of Vietnam. Not a Vietnam vet, but
sure.
And I actually grew up in Sparta, Wisconsin, just outside of Fort McCoy. So I seen it growing up. I seen the Army, but it wasn't until kind of after 2001. And 9/11 is when it kind of really kicked in and sunk in that this is something I was going to try to pursue. And at that point in time, I had to make some lifestyle adjustments because I was not a candidate for the military at that time because I was out of shape, overweight, and stuff. So I took the next year and a half, completely changed my life, and then I was off in 2003.
Okay. And then, so tell me a little bit about what I keep on going back to. I want to talk about tactical recovery, but I do want to talk about I don't know if it's curiosity or if it's helpful, but let's talk about the attempt. Not asking. You can go into as much detail as you want, but do you remember your mindset?
Yes. So the mindset at that time was, I had been dealing with this addiction issue for quite a few years. I had tried over and over and over again to attain sobriety on my own. I had hidden it from everybody in my family very well. Nobody knew anything. I had a live-in girlfriend at the time. She didn't even know. And everything was kind of starting to hit the wall. It was going to be exposed if something didn't happen. And I just felt lost. And then on top of it, I was actually going through withdrawal for about 5 or 6 days from opiates, and I was compensating that withdrawal sickness with Adderall, methamphetamines, and that just spun me up really, really bad. Got my mind just going, and once I, kind of had the thought about suicide, it was off and running, and
sure.
It's like a freight train. It was really hard to get my mind off of it. So that was it. It was fear, embarrassment. I knew that this thing was going to be exposed. I was afraid of what my family would think, what they would say, how they would look at me, what it would do, and I just thought that the answer was to end my life, but it definitely wasn't.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. What were you afraid of them thinking if they found out?
That's a really good question. I think it's just I've always kind of held myself to a high standard, so maybe it's just self-imposed type stuff. But when you serve in the military, and you can relate to this, you're in a place where you have a lot of pride over what you're doing. And then suddenly that's taken away, and you don't realize it until after you get out that this is going to happen. But you have a lot of pride in what you're doing. You're doing something that you can be happy to do. It's got a lot of ups and downs, but yet it's very, you can be very passionate about it. At least I was. And then when that's removed, and all of a sudden you're back out in civilian life, and you think that you're going to find that kind of niche thing to fall back into, and then it doesn't happen. And then on top of it, you're having social anxiety with trying to reintegrate back and find friends and purpose and all this stuff. It's just, it becomes really overwhelming, and you end up just sitting there. And I know for myself and a lot of other veterans that I know, the general tendency is to isolate and draw in. And when you do that, then all those things just get exacerbated even more because you're not connecting with anybody whatsoever. And I think it's just that, being isolated away from everybody, not having real purpose anymore when I came from something else, and not wanting to be a failure,
Right, so. Right. Is there something to be said about, it's a very highly structured life,
Mm-hmm.
being in
Yes.
the military, and I don't have experience, but I'm just assuming there. Is there's something to be said about, you know, that ingrained pride, like that purpose and that pride, I think is structured into your everyday life, and when that structure is just what we're seeing now with, I think initially with people being quarantined, people shutting down. A lot of people in the world, the structure of their life is broken down and been taken away, and we're seeing a lot of, you know, animosity. That's when you see a lot of conspiracy theories kind of get a rise because, and anger and protest and everything. Is there any? Did that have any effect when you leave the military? That just like removal of that structure?
Yeah, I would absolutely say so, because you have to change your entire way of thinking. You know, the military is very proficient at breaking you down and then rebuilding you back up how they want you, so that you work within the system that they've created. And it's necessary to be able to function and you know, survive in that environment. So, but it's a way of living that it works okay in the civilian area in some ways, but then in other ways, the things that I think drive you to continue to want to live that lifestyle, you don't get that positive reinforcement back in the civilian sector that you would have in the military. All you get is kind of the, I don't want to say the negative, but in a way it's just, you know, you're living through the regimented lifestyle stuff, but then there's none of the positive stuff coming back in, you know?
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that's a huge process. That transaction is very difficult, and you don't know until it happens, and there's very little that takes place when you do transition out of the military. I think that they should be doing a lot more to create, to fill that void and create purpose in veterans' lives. You know, I hear a lot of times about different programs wanting to give veterans things, you know, whether it be trips here or, you know, provide them with work there or free stuff here. And that's great, totally appreciate it. But I think most veterans, more than anything, they don't really want to be given anything. Like we're very used to working for what we get.
Right.
We just want to be a part of something bigger than just ourselves. You know, we want to have that sense of pride and purpose again. Like, give us something that we can really latch onto and feel that sense of accomplishment again.
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, they might be offering some jobs and stuff, but they're not always necessarily at the level that can associate with some of that stuff. So, not to demean the positive things that people try to do for veterans, because it's all great, but I think for most veterans, that's lacking of a sense of purpose, you know, ambition, and all that. It causes a lot of conflict in your mind.
Yeah, it kind of comes with finding solutions to help veterans, not coming from veterans themselves.
Right.
It kind of, everything sounds nice and flowery and we're supporting you, but not knowing, being disconnected from what you actually need and want.
Right.
You know, that's something that has to come from someone that's been there.
Absolutely.
If you trust that
Absolutely.
person.
Yep.
So maybe that gets us to tactical recovery.
No, I was thinking the exact same thing. It's so funny you mentioned that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So why don't you tell me about it?
So Tactical Recovery is a program that is created to allow veterans to empower other veterans. The principal kind of philosophy is that I want internal accountability for everyone. It's more of a platoon or clubhouse type environment where it's not very regimented and structured, but yet everyone is kind of getting each other's backs, and there's no like institutionalization whatsoever. Like, I try to remove that as much as humanly possible, because I don't want, you know, we get enough of that as it is through the VA and all that stuff. I wanted it to just be like a bunch of friends getting together, trying to help everybody and make sure that everybody is doing what they need to do and being able to achieve what they are capable of achieving, and we do it together. So, and in that, you know, obviously our focus is centered around recovery. That's where our main focus is on. But then, you know, it's just life encompassing and everything, you know. Like, I just want we veterans, they pay to sacrifice enough. Like, they should be able to enjoy life as much as possible. And if we can help each other achieve that, you know, level of happiness and everything, then hey, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you maybe already, or I guess are there any like structured activities, or is it, I guess, how does it work?
Sure. Programming wise, right now, what it is there's 3 different phases basically. There's in classroom, there's group, and then there's recreational activities. So a couple different times during the week, I'll have a classroom session where we'll discuss a different type. Everything that I use as teaching is straight out of Smart Recovery, just because it's the only evidence-based recovery program that exists to date, unfortunately. But it's still, and the material that they have, it can cross over into so many different areas, so it's very beneficial that way. So I'll teach a different, recovery skill, life skill from Smart Recovery, and then we have one-on-one sessions available for people where I can take that skill set that we taught to a generalized group and help to try to fine-tune it just a little bit down for the actual individual's personal experience. And then from there, you can take that and then apply it to a real-life scenario where we go out on a recreational outing of some sort, where there'd be going to a baseball game, or we've gone and done what were they called? The escape rooms downtown. Okay. We've done different stuff like that. Just fun stuff. Do? Pretty good. Everybody loved it. I know, and I was actually very surprised at how fun it really is. And it's a good team building experience. I was very happy. But yeah, it's just about getting back out into normal society activities, and then trying to implement those tools that we taught in the classes and stuff. So it's kind of a crawl, walk, run kind of mentality, which is something that's preached quite heavily in the military. So
sure. What are some difficulties or barriers to veterans saying getting to that point and realizing like they need to seek out a group like this?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think a lot of the same things that I mentioned earlier that were causing me problems, the pride, you're coming from such an elite place, or whatever you want to call it, that to ask for help just kind of makes you feel like you're not achieving what you could be,
Sure.
Not to use the word failure, but I guess it kind of makes you feel that way, like you're used to being able to handle things, and when you can't handle them on your own, then that there's somebody, standing to your left or to your right that's going to help you handle it. Well, when that's all removed and now you're kind of on your own, and then you can't deal with it, you don't have anybody to go to try to ask how to deal with it, even if there is someone, but you don't really know them, you don't know their history. That's why it's so beneficial to have it be a peer type of relationship, because there's that instant connection when people walk through the door of knowing that we've all served and we've all kind of been through some bit of a journey that mimics everybody else's. So there's that instant connection, and it really helps break down a lot of barriers for a lot of people and just create a very conducive environment for healing, So yeah, I mean, aside from that, it's a great question. I know it's something that is our biggest hurdle to overcome, is to let the veterans know that, hey, here is this program for you. If you're struggling, it's okay. It's not your fault. Look what you've been through. It's understandable, but just come and talk to us, and we can help you get through some of this stuff, because you can't do it on your own. Unfortunately, it's just too powerful.
Right.
These PTSD and substance abuse and all that stuff is it's too difficult to do on your own. There might be a few people out there who have managed to be able to go from having substance abuse problems to not using that substance anymore. Sure. But I'm from the belief that they never really recover. They never really get healed. It's just Absolutely. They stopped using that substance, So we want to have you come in so that you don't have to even consider using that substance anymore. We're not so much, you do have to address the substance use issue, but it's usually some other underlying condition that is driving the substance use, and that's what Absolutely. We really want to focus on.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about that in Smart Recovery too.
Yep.
Because not doing the thing that brought you there is a big step. If you can't have recovery without stopping that activity or that thought process, but you can't get recovery unless you kind of dig into why.
Right.
Why that happened in the first place. Why did that thought process change? And it's funny because it's not funny, but it's interesting that you don't do anything in the military by yourself.
No.
You have your team, you have your units, you do nothing by yourself, but then when you get home, you kind of think that should be able to handle anything by yourself.
Yep.
I think that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of that's fine.
Okay.
What type of outreach have you been doing? Like, how are you getting people?
So
aware?
we're partnered with this still through the LAVMP. So we do get some referrals through them, through the Veterans Court as well. They really try to push some people over here. Additionally, Justice Support Services is another area. They have accredited this program so that anybody who is in Justice Support Services, they can get their hours or whatever it is that they call it through coming to us. And then additionally, word of mouth is a really big one. A call to action, like, letting people know, hey, if you know someone, tell them this exists. Social media, and then we did do some radio and TV type stuff for a little while. But I would say the biggest thing, especially when you're dealing with something like recovery, it's so personal that it's best when it's coming from another person, because it just breaks down the taboo of it, I guess, a little bit when somebody's talking you to it directly. Like, it's really easy to put up a defense and tell yourself, I don't have any of these problems when you're just hearing it over the radio or seeing it on the TV. But when somebody's talking to you directly and you know that these things exist, but you putting up a shield and hoping that they can't see it, it creates a little bit more vulnerability in yourself, and then it might help you, the person who is suffering from it, kind of come to terms with, okay, I do need to ask someone for some assistance. Sure. And that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, there's no other way to overcome this stuff,
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for everybody.
You bet.
So yeah, I mean, person to person, do you get a lot of referrals from the community, or is it mainly from the network of veterans?
I would say network of veterans. The network of veterans is the biggest one. The vet center is another one where we will get some people that come on down. But we are still very much in the infancy of this program. Technically speaking, we've only been operational for about 4 months, considering the shutdown for the COVID and all that stuff. So in 4 months, we had approximately, it was right around 80 participants. Now, that's not to say 80 different participants, but 80 people participated in the various things that we did in that 4-month time span. So I would say, all in all, there was probably 20 to 30 different veterans that participated. They just participated in multiple different things on different days, which one of the neat things about this program is you don't have to participate in the whole thing. You can pick and choose what you want to participate. If all you want to do is go out on the recreational outings, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
you can do that. If you just want to come for the Veterans Smart Meeting, that's fine too. This is something that we're trying to provide to fit your lifestyle, what the person that needs it is available to access, and to run with it as best as possible.
Okay. I mean, it still seems like a pretty healthy group, 30 people, especially in 4 months.
Right.
Kind of just getting started.
Yeah. It's pretty. It was good. We were really building up some steam there, and then the world kind of.
How have you adjusted to that?
We basically, unfortunately, just kind of been at a complete holding pattern right now. Okay. Hoping to kind of reopen things back up in July, get the stuff going again. Okay. But unfortunately, for now, we have put everything on hold.
Okay. Have you been able to maintain contact with a lot of the people?
Not all of them. A couple of them, unfortunately. The social media stuff is still out there, but even that has really ground down to a halt, just because. Sure. Yes, we do put a lot of inspirational messages out and stuff still, but there, like what I utilize the social media for is that connection on what we had going, what was coming up, so that people knew what they could, what to attend and where they could attend it. And unfortunately, that's just not happening right now. So we are definitely really going to need to evaluate our promotional type stuff once everything kind of gets back to normal, and we're going to have a real big campaign and push to get the word out to people, and that's something that we're working on currently. going over some different ideas on different things we want to maybe try to do. Something that is in my mindset is to have some type of a competition, whether it be a Tough Mudder event or just something that brings everybody out. It doesn't have to be just veteran specific, but everybody, so that we can then, if they're not a veteran, have kind of a call to action for them to go out and find us veterans, bring them in, let them know, and then if you are a veteran, hey, now you're you know what we got. So nothing's set up yet, but hopefully we'll have something soon on that.
Okay. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. I mean, that'd be kind of cool.
It would be.
Be able to
it would be. And some of the organizations that we partner with, like we do partner up with Kurt Paff State Farm. He's one of our sponsors. So anytime that you get a quote, it's called Quotes for Good. And anytime you get a quote from him, if you're a new customer, he donates, I think it's like $10 to us, regardless of whether or not you sign with him. So you just basically have to call Kurt Paff and say like, hey, can I get a quote for auto insurance? He'll provide you with a quote on what it would cost, and then he'll just donate $10 to just mention Tactical Recovery Group, and he'll donate $10.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
It's pretty great. So, and that's something that he was wanting to do kind of on his own, so he's on board with it. And then there's a couple different other partners that are interested as well. So hopefully something will go with it.
And so, kind of had to shut things down a little bit. You did mention, I mean, in our discussions, you mentioned another nonprofit that you've been working on.
Yeah. So if we go back to when we first started the interview, and I was talking about my service dog who ended up saving my life. That's something that's I hold very near and dear to my heart. The benefit of service dogs and PTSD animals. Like I said, I would not be here today if he wasn't in my life at that time. Unfortunately, just a few months back, he ended up passing away due to a brain tumor that came on kind of out of nowhere. And I was trying to get him treatments and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it was too heavy and he couldn't survive through it. But the treatments, radiation and stuff like that, very expensive stuff down at UW. Right. I reached out to every nonprofit organization that might be willing to help that I could possibly find. I probably petitioned out to 100 different places, and a lot of them got back to me, and a lot of the time I got the same answer where it was, that's very tragic, we're sorry to hear that, but unfortunately it just doesn't kind of fit within our mission, or we're not able to assist you because you're not within our geographical region where we are able to assist. But then at one point, I had an organization called the Brodys Fund reach out to me, and while that was still the case for them, I was not located within their geographical region that they typically assist. They were just kind of so moved and touched by the story, they said, we're going to make it happen anyways. And the way they ended up making that happening is they created a brand new nonprofit specifically for veterans and their animals who are fighting cancer, and they named it after my service dog Phoenix, and it's called the Brodys Phoenix Fund, and it's a program that is entirely dedicated specifically to veterans to help with the cost of their animals getting treatment for cancer. So, yeah.
And how nice? Where are they based out of?
They're actually out of New Jersey. But the veterans program itself is national. So you don't have to be, for that particular program, you can be anywhere to apply. If you just Google Brodys Phoenix Fund, you'll be able to find it. And like I said, you can apply regardless of where you're located for the funds. The Brodys Fund itself is allocated specifically for New Jersey, but the Brodys Phoenix Fund is for everywhere. As long as you're a veteran, that's the only requirement.
Yeah. Tell me about that relationship between you and, between a veteran and their service dog.
Yeah. It's something that's almost impossible to even put into words. I think for me, he was the one kind of thing that was constant in my life, no matter how bad things got. There was never any fear of judgment. Was I, doing enough, or was I successful enough for him? Just being there was enough for him. just, I actually call it relentless love is what it was. Like, no matter what I did, no matter where I was, there was times I was sleeping in my car, homeless. He didn't care. He was always happy. He was always there. He just wanted to be with me. Of course, he loved to play fetch too, and have stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, he broke through a lot of barriers that I put up around my heart to protect myself from other things. And he just smashed right through them and got right to the center. And it's that, it's almost the unspoken connection that it's so hard to put into words, but it's just something that, he doesn't have to say anything. I don't have to say anything. We could read each other. We knew each other. Like the day that he saved my life, like there was nothing said. He just picked up on my heightened level of stress and just acted at the right time. I mean, had he done that same thing 10 minutes earlier, it wouldn't have had that same effect, so I don't know how he knew, but he knew, he knew that I was in pain, that, I was going through something very difficult, and just to come over and just set his head in my lap and just look at me and say, hey man, it's okay. Like, you're putting way too much on yourself. This isn't your fault. And, I still want you to be here. It's a bond that I've never experienced in any other way. And I think a lot of people who have had service animals in the past or currently would say the exact same thing. I wish I could put it into words better, but that's just the best way I can describe it. It's so beneficial. And I actually, another thing that I do is in-home counseling with people with addictions. That's not through tactical recovery or anything. It's through a different job that I have. Okay. But being that I had Phoenix, he was always with me, it was easy to see the effect that he had on other people too. Right. I remember I was working with one person, and this person was very guarded, very reserved, very reluctant to tell me anything about their past. And then one day I just asked if he wanted to go to the dog park with me in Phoenix, just to, throw the ball around a little bit and just have some fun. And he agreed. And we went there, and immediately he starts playing fetch with Phoenix, and he just kind of got out of his own head, got out of everything that was holding him back from opening up, and just started spilling his guts. Sure. Not even really knowing that he was doing it. I mean, he just pick up the ball, throw it, Phoenix would get it, come back, drop it in his hand, over, and before you know it, he's just told me all this incredible stuff about his life that I don't think he ever would have told me, except for in that type of a setting. So I've seen firsthand in myself and in other people the power and the effect that service animals can have. And while I think it's something that it's really growing in awareness, I think there's still a lot more that can be done utilizing animals for this purpose,
Absolutely.
So it's my hope to see that happen. I would love to see, different counseling venues or whatever you want to call it that have a service dog that's just there and can bring him in when have a sexual assault survivor or something, or a veteran or a child that is dealing with some issues. You can pull him in and they just start petting that animal and they get comfy, and before you know it, healing starts to happen. It's pretty cool.
Makes you feel comfortable to open up.
It's strange the effect that they can have, and it's such a powerful thing. I wish I could think of a word to give it justice, but I just can't.
Yeah. Well, it's just love. Like you just know. I mean, I think you said it great about there's no judgment, there's no expectation. There's just something that is there. A family member. I mean, it's a family member that it's there for you. If everything else falls apart, like you have that family member that you don't want to let down. And
for sure.
What are some things? I think we're wrapping up a little bit here. I guess before we go, what are some things that civilians need to know, or that we can do to better accept veterans back into the world here?
I guess one thing is an understanding that we're not damaged society has gotten a lot better about this, but go back to like after Vietnam, and the way a lot of the veterans were kind of looked at back then is these broken, damaged people that weren't ever going to get to a place of being able to function in what most people deem as normal society. That's not the case. We just do things in a totally different fashion than what you're used to. And it's just how we are able to adjust. It's how we are, it's how we're driven. That's how we succeed in things. It's what we learned and we were taught when we were in the service. And even though majority of normal society doesn't play by those rules, it's still applicable, and we can still function in the same kind of confines that everybody else functions in, and be very successful in a lot of ways. And on that same note, that's kind of one of the other things too, is just allow us to have meaningful and purposeful jobs and positions, and just just know that we're capable of a lot of good things, even if we're have been through something like combat or something like that. I can't think of anything else on that note, but it's just one of those things where people, they want to help, they don't know how to approach. I guess that's another one too. It's just understand that it's okay to ask questions. I mean, like for myself, I know, and I'm sure there's a lot of veterans that would attest to this, the things that I live through, I still live with every day in my head. Yeah. So if you ask me about them, you're not necessarily drudging stuff up that I don't think about every day anyways. Now, you have to do it in a tactful, way. Like if you just come up to a veteran and say, how many people have you killed? That's not the way things work. But give us a platform to kind of share these stories that we have, because it's traumatic, powerful, incredible things that we've been through that we have to live with every day, no matter what. So don't be afraid to ask. Let them, let the veterans that kind of tell their story the way that they want to tell it. Feel free to, kind of want to learn what they went through. That's perfectly okay. If there's something that a veteran doesn't want to talk about, they're either going to say they don't want to talk about it, or they're just not going to talk about it. Right. I don't think that there's necessarily any wrong question, but there is a sense of delivering a question. Like, what is your purpose for asking this question? Is it because you want to learn about the struggles that the veteran has been through, or is it because you play too many video games and you're trying to stack up the kills, or something like that? So that's one of the other things I would say to people, is just understand that it's okay to want to talk. It's okay to want to know. We want you to come and ask us this stuff, because I think a lot of, like myself, when the beginning of this, I didn't want to just start telling stories to people who weren't interested. I mean, because one, it kind of diminishes the significance of the story if they don't want to hear the story. So why would I go through, what I would have to go through to relive it, even though I'm reliving it all the time? And then two, who really wants to listen is a harder thing than deciding, well, does this person want to tell? You know what I'm saying? That if that makes any sense. Like, it's easier to assess, and find out if a veteran wants to talk than it is for a veteran to try to ask you if you want to listen, almost.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, it's difficult in anything. I can't imagine walking around like festival foods and kind of trying to find somebody that wants to listen to your story. It's not met. No. You're kind of probably viewed as that person like standing on a park bench yelling at everybody on the street.
Right, exactly. Yep. It almost puts you as it puts a person off to you if you just walk up to anybody and start sharing the stories, and then people aren't going to believe your story or whatever. It's just not realistic. So
is there in that respect, I mean, is there any like one experience during your time in service that you feel kind of had the biggest impact on you, positively or negatively?
Yes. Some of them that I probably wouldn't be appropriate to tell here. Okay. But what I will say is the biggest impact that a affected me that I got from my military time was the relationship that I created with the men that I served with. It, again, is a relationship that, I have brothers, I have sisters. I love my brothers, I love my sisters, I love my family, but the relationship I had with the guys in my platoon, it just transcends all of that in a way that, again, it's hard to describe. You live together, you bleed together, you sweat together, you cry together, in short, brief periods of time. We're not talking 20 years, we're talking, for I think the average soldier serves 2 or 3 years of time. In 2 or 3 years you pack in so many experiences, and you always have that person to rely on. They're there all the time, and then it's the only kind of environment where you really have to rely on someone for your survival of living. It's not just words. When somebody says, "Hey, I got your back," they prove it through their actions.
Sure.
And that relationship, I have guys who I served with who I probably haven't seen or really even talked to in any significance for 5 or 6 years, but I could call them up today and we wouldn't miss a beat. We would go right back into everything that the way we had it 5, 6 years ago, just because of the relationship that we have, the bond that we have through the experiences that we shared. So
sure. Once you get back from that, is there a desire to reach out to other people that you served with, or is it something that needs a little bit of time?
I think for some it is. I think that's kind of just an individual thing. I definitely work at staying connected to some degree.
Sure.
I want to know that if I want to, or if I need to reach out to someone and connect with them, I can.
Sure.
Now there's, unfortunately life gets busy and we're scattered all across the country. So certain things, you start having families, relationships, careers, and it keeps you from talking to them as much as possible. But I always want to know that, if I need to for something, I can reach out to them. Like, for example, the day that I had my suicide attempt, one of the very first people that I called, in fact, he might have been, I just can't remember for sure, I think he was the first person that I called, was a guy who I served with, just to kind of talk about, everything that I was dealing with. And he was the first person that I opened up to about having a substance abuse problem.
Okay.
So I want to have that still available, and I want them to have that for me too, in case they need something, because I did a kind of an internal little survey or whatever you want to call it once, where I went back and I counted all the people that I served with in my platoon. It was like 46 guys. And then I started counting, how many are in prison? How many have a substance abuse problem? How many are dead? How many committed suicide, or this, and the other? And when I finally got done counting of all that I knew of, because unfortunately I'm not in connection with all 46.
Right.
But out of all of them that I knew, which was a good majority, over 2/3 fell into that category where they had one of those 4 things, whether it be in prison, dead, substance abuse, or have had a suicide attempt.
Yeah.
2/3. That's, unacceptable in my eyes. I think everybody would agree, and it's just unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. And I believe that we shouldn't have to live with all of that is causing all these problems.
Right.
And they don't have to. They just got to get some assistance from the right people. And it's my hope that tactical recovery can provide that to them, because it's something that's very familiar. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is, the name of the group, Tactical Recovery. It's named that because by design, I wanted it to play off what I call, and I refer to as the tactical mindset. And every person who's ever served in any branch of the military, they've all been taught the tactical mindset. And what the tactical mindset is, just that to never leave a brother behind, a brother or sister behind, to police your own, get each other's backs. And that's what I wanted to play off for this program. And that's why I called it Tactical Recovery, to kind of pick up on that same kind of way of thinking. We're going to protect our own, we're going to get your back. If you're not doing so well today, I'm going to help. When I'm not doing so well tomorrow, you're going to help me, you know. That's what I wanted, because I think that's what most veterans are used to. It's a very familiar place, and there's just a lot of connection that comes in that type of environment.
Yeah. So tactical recovery, you're thinking maybe July?
For restarting?
For restarting.
Yep.
How can we best help that be a successful restart?
The biggest thing right now is just getting that word out to let them know. I mean, I know, like, from my own experience, I isolated, and, you know, when I isolated, I dug in like a tick and just got deep, you know, where I disconnected from TV, social media, all that stuff. Like, so getting the word out to veterans to let them know, whether it be word of mouth or through someone else or whatever, and just don't be afraid to, I don't want to make people be judgmental, but at the same time, don't be afraid to kind of wonder, is someone struggling? You know, like, that's something that's really hard for everybody to assess. You know, working in addictions and stuff like that, that's something I know a lot of people ask about. Well, how can I tell if my loved one or if this person is actually has an addiction issue? And there's a lot of indicators, and usually the people who are best at picking up on them are the ones who have been through it. But kind of, you know, trust your instincts, and it's okay to ask that person, and, you know, are you struggling? Are you hurting right now? You know, don't frame it from a point of where you're judging them, or kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know. You're not judging them. You're just trying to evaluate where they're at. You know, you're not calling them out. You're not putting anything on them. You're just trying to. You're coming from a caring place, and you're trying to see. And I would say that, you know, majority of the time, if they don't have a problem and you ask these questions, it would just be a casual, no, I'm okay, or whatever. It wouldn't end up being a big issue. If it becomes a big issue where there's a major blow up, then I would say there's probably a pretty strong likelihood that, there is something wrong, you know? Because why would anybody get upset for knowing that someone cares about them and wants to make sure that they're okay? You know, so unless they're hiding something. So, but that's kind of the biggest thing that we really need, is to just continue to drive the message home that, and get it to the veterans that, hey, you know, if you're struggling, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, you don't have to have a substance use issue to come be a part of this program. If you're just, you know, suffering from social anxiety and you haven't been able to plug back into, you know, the system that is out there that's so different from what we're familiar with, come on and join us. You know, like, you can help a different veteran who's suffering from something. You know, it's not a strike against you to ask for help. It actually takes a very strong person to come and ask for help. It's way more difficult to admit your vulnerabilities than it is to try to cover them up. So that's the biggest thing. Just continue to get that word out, let people know. You know, obviously funding is always a positive thing that we need. You know, this is a nonprofit, so everything that we use to drive the program, it's all done through donation and stuff like that. So, but I guess those are the two biggest ones right now.
Sure. Do you have a page set up to take donations?
Unfortunately, no, but they can make a donation directly to our website for the Cooler Recovery Center, and you would just make a memo that if you wanted to allocate those funds specifically for tactical recovery, you can do that right there. So we don't have like a GoFundMe page or anything like that, but the website is available. Otherwise, you could just mail it right to the Cooler Recovery Center as well. But
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, JT, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you kind of sharing yourself, sharing your stories. And I look forward to seeing this place reopen.
Yeah, me too. I really appreciate you coming on out and giving me an opportunity to kind of share my story. I want to be able to do that as much as possible, because if that can help, if it can resonate with someone and it can help them know that they're not alone, then, you know, it helps gives me a little bit more purpose in why I suffered and went through everything that I went through. So, and that can then, you know, translate into the next person once they have their kind of healing process, and they can then help somebody else. So I really appreciate you coming on out and doing this, and hope for a lot of great things in the future.
Perfect. All right.
All right, man. Awesome.
I think we got it.
Yeah.
Nice.